few years ago, the Great Barrier Reef bleached. 93% of it bleached. Now, some has recovered, but it'll never really truly be the same. And one of the 8 wonders of the world has really come into question is, will this reef survive climate change? Well, I do have some good news, because a mountain of reef taller than the Eiffel Tower was found on the Great Barrier Reef. And we're going to talk about that on today's episode of the Speak Out for the Ocean Blue podcast. Let's start the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the Speak Out for the Ocean Blue podcast. I am your host, Andrew Lewin. I've got some great news today. There was a new mountain of coral reef that was found that is over 1,500 feet in height, and it's part of the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park in Australia. It is the 8th known detached coral reef in the area and first to be discovered in the past 120 years. Unreal. While little is known about these reefs, scientists have observed that they host an array of marine life. And this particular reef doesn't appear to have been affected by the recent bleaching events in the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park, and that's according to the lead researcher. I just read that from the highlights of the Manga Bay article, where it says a mountain of a reef taller than the Eiffel Tower found in the Great Barrier Reef. It's by Elizabeth Clare Alberts, and it was published on October 27th, 2020 on mangabay.com. It's something that we always love. We always love using Manga Bay articles because they're so original, they're so detailed, and we just love having them around. Now, what does this mean for the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park? What it means is that there is more reef than meets the eye, I guess is what it really means. It's great news, to be honest. It's something, if you want details, I highly recommend that you go into the show notes, click on the link and go into the article and read the article. But essentially, they say it's 1.5 times as tall as the Eiffel Tower, or 1 3/10 as high as the Empire State Building for all you Americans out there. As Robin Beeman, an expedition leader, says, it's exciting that we can still find unusually tall reefs in the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park. And this is something... Robin Beeman is a marine geologist at James Cook University, and she's still on expedition at the time of this article. The voyage is part of a huge project to map the coastline of Australia, including the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park. They're using ROVs to do it, and that's how they found this area. The base of the mountain is 1.5 kilometers. I guess that's radius or diameter. I guess it's diameter. And it kind of goes up to probably to about 130 feet in or 40 meters in depth from the ocean surface. So it's still pretty deep. It's mesophotic, so it's still deeper than 100 feet. And so it'll have a variety of different coral reefs or corals on there. But also it's just teeming with large sharks, lots of fish, like thousands of coral fish. And it's just absolutely killer. It's just amazing to see that these coral reefs have all this amazing stuff. In the article, there's a picture, a cuttlefish living on a newly discovered detached coral reef. So there's cuttlefish, there's sharks, there's lots of vertebrates and fish and invertebrates like shrimp and crabs and probably lobsters and everything. Just think about the South Pacific, especially in that area, and think about the diversity, especially when you're on the cusp of the Great Barrier Reef and you're part of the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park. The good news is this area is part of the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park, and that it is protected, right? Now, in the park, it actually has different levels of protection, so it will need to be protected in different ways, but it is still protected. And it's something that is great for the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park, also great for this reef where it was found, because it's already in a protected area. That means it can't have anything harm done to it. Obviously, more research is going to be needed to be done. Maybe discover some new species, maybe discover a new area. notably, this reef hasn't been affected by climate change as much as all the other parts of the reef. It's not as shallow, obviously. Back in the 1700s, when the Great Barrier Reef was discovered by James Cook, when he first sailed there, it was mapped, but only really the shallow areas. Now that we have the ROVs to actually be able to go deep into the ocean, we can actually find more coral reefs, and deep sea coral reefs are very interesting. They provide a lot of diversity that we didn't even know about, and hopefully we'll be able to discover something new, maybe some new species, maybe some new things about coral reefs that will maybe give us light into finding out how to save the shallow coral reefs, hopefully. A lot of these seamounts, these areas with these little mountains, or big mountains, I should say, are very good for diversity. I remember doing a study as part of my master's. We looked at the banks along the Scotian Shelf. We noticed that diversity was definitely proportionate to the surface area of the seamount, or of the banks. And so seamounts are very much the same because they provide such a distinctive habitat. And they're low enough that they cannot really be affected by humans, in terms of climate change and so forth, that they tend to be very significant in terms of biodiversity and maintaining biodiversity. And since it's already in a protected area, that's always great to have, because now we know that the biodiversity is protected, and maybe it wouldn't have been so protected if that Great Barrier Reef Marine Park wasn't there and wasn't established. A lot of times when we establish a protected area like the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park, as they're designating it, the area matters, and usually they go with the least amount of area with the best bang for their buck. So the most protection, so the most biodiversity, or the best fisheries, or something like that to protect, so that it could spill over along the boundaries. But in this case, it just looked like where this protection came in, this seamount was there. And so it just so happened to be beneficial for this time. A lot of times it's not as beneficial, and then it requires, say it's just outside the boundary or quite a bit outside the boundary, it requires its own boundary to be put on it, which makes it very difficult to get that done. Or it requires the expansion of the boundary of, say, the existing Marine Protected Area Park, which again is very difficult to do because the boundaries were set and through a stakeholder engagement process and methodology, which can be very difficult to do in the first place. It seems like the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park lucked out in this situation, but they also have a very good relationship with their stakeholders. Now, with that said, there have been some plans to be able to dump coal mining extract into in parts of the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park. Obviously, not an ideal place to do that. These extracts are full of harmful metals that will leach out and that will go into the water and could affect the coral reefs. Corals are very sensitive animals, and so temperature can set them off. An increase in temperature or a drop in temperature can set them off. A drop in pH or an increase in pH can set them off if it's not in the right ideal area. So imagine what harmful metals can do, even just in a minute amount, can actually affect the corals a great deal. So if you have like arsenic, you have elevated levels of mercury, even just elevated from the background levels, the reference levels, it ends up being quite harmful could be quite harmful to the coral reefs. We've already seen, sunscreen and chemicals that are in sunscreen, even in minute amounts, can affect coral health, especially if it's, if there's a lot of divers or snorkelers in the area that are wearing these types of chemical heavy sunscreen, and so that could affect the coral reefs and the individual coral animals. So metals can be very bad for the entire reef, especially the localized areas of the reef. So if you're dumping coal mining extract, you are dumping in large amounts, you could affect the entire coral reef around that area where you're dumping. So obviously not an ideal situation, and it's something that government needs to protect. You have this eighth wonder of the world, this UN monument, this beautiful area that spans quite a bit of Australia, of the Australian eastern coast, half of the Australian eastern coast. You want to protect it. It's a huge tourist attraction. Brings in a lot of money for the economy in terms of tourism. You don't want to ruin it with coal mining extract. It just doesn't make sense, in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinion as well. And I'm sure in a lot of your opinion. So the fact that we have this discovery is huge. It just builds the importance of the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park in discovering. It also builds on the importance and how crucial it is to continue to explore, to find more of these gems. I wonder how many more of these seamounts are out there, because a lot of the times seamounts and canyons tend to be around in groups. And so I wonder if there are more groups as we map these areas. And mapping is a huge endeavor to take. And so having the Australian government doing this is such an important task. Not an easy task and very expensive, but such an important task to do. I think it's great that they're doing it, and it's great that they found this wonderful gem along their coastline and within already a marine protected area. Now, if you want to see some of the beauty of this area, you can go on to the Manga Bay News article. If you just go in the link that I put in the show notes, there's a YouTube video of this area. And I'm going to tell you, man, I'm watching it right now as I do it. It's 2 hours. So if you just want to just sit back, have it in the background, and look at this wonderful area, very, very cool in terms of depth. They tell you what depth they're at, what's on there. It's just absolutely stunning. They even go a little bit in, like, they show you where they are within the mount, and they have like arms of the ROV. You can see how they work it and what they're looking at and taking samples and stuff. And it's just absolutely fantastic. And like I said, it's 2 hours long, so you can definitely explore. If you're a teacher, this is something to show your students, because this is just wonderful things. And you can see how the different corals react to the bright light that is on from the ROV that is on them, and it's just it's fascinating. Very, very fascinating. So something to look at. Go to the show notes in your app that you're listening to this podcast episode on, and you can check that out. So I'm kind of getting thrown off by what I'm looking at right now, but it's really, really cool. Think about 500-meter tall reef, all reef, just teeming with life. It's just something that you just can't duplicate anywhere else. That's where this world, this area we call the ocean is just so fantastic. So I just love it. So anyway, that's the episode for today. I highly recommend you check out this article for the pictures as well as the video. It's something that's really, really cool that we've discovered, and something that I think will be very interesting for you in the future to look at, and for us in the future just to keep on discovering. Next episode, I've got a really interesting update from a podcast that I did with Conservation International, and it's something that I think would be really cool about deep sea mining, something that, talk about coral reefs and deep sea coral reefs and what we have to be careful in the future, planning ahead, being proactive instead of reactive. We're going to talk about black coral reefs in the deep sea. So that's going to be an update on that, and I hope to bring that to you on Monday. Probably not an interview, but definitely I'll be doing a solo episode on it, so something to look forward to. But thank you so much for listening to this episode. I want to know what you think about this. Have you seen the video? What do you like the best? And also, what do you think this does for marine conservation in general, these exploratory gems that we keep finding using ROVs and ocean engineering technology? Love to hear what you think. Go to the Speak Up for Blue Facebook group. And don't forget, the deadline's coming for early registration to the Mindful Conservation Conference. You want to be able to get your tickets, $20 each for 4 days. There's 2 extra days that I highly recommend that you be there. I'm going to be presenting on science communication and social media. There's going to be other things about just conservation and mindfulness and getting through what's difficult about conservation. It can be a burden on your mind, emotionally, mentally. It's something that you have to get over, and this is a great conference that's never really been done before. It's something that I think you should check out. So go to absolutely smashing.llc.com to check that out. Again, the link is in the show notes, so check all those links out, as well as the rest of our network. You can check that out. And until next time, thank you so much for listening to the Speak Up for the Ocean Blue podcast. I am your host, Andrew Lewin. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. I'll talk to you on Monday, and happy conservation.